So there's the idea of geopolitics, basically the hardcore reality of international politics. And basically it's about the philosophy of conflict, and we want to make it about a morality. But the thing is to make a moral decision, my point has been that uh, you have to be on the same side as that person, really. Um, it might seem counterintuitive because you're thinking, no, the moral question is I have a conflict with somebody. Yeah, you have a conflict with them, and you're supposed to remember that you're actually on the same side. That you're both citizens and you need to treat each other fairly. You have a conflict, but you're supposed to remember you're on the same side. And that's really what it's about. Moralities are programs for the mind that we use because we want to do the right thing. We already said we want to do the right thing, and we don't necessarily know what it is. So we use our morality to help us figure out what the right thing is. And in moral questions, we're talking about we as a group of people trying to do the right thing, to and for each other, and so on. And so that's your moral decision process. This is as a group trying to do something good for everybody involved. Now, if somebody is psychopathic or sociopathic or whichever of these kinds of terms you want to talk about, or psychological issues or just philosophical issues of people that don't want to cooperate, they're like, fuck no, I want to fight and break the system, and we have some sympathies with some of those things. Sometimes the system needs to be broken, but be that as it may, it can be as arbitrary as, a sociopath that wants to do negative things to people. That person is not susceptible to your moral argument. All right? That is all I'm saying. In that case, you've got some sort of philosophy about how you engage in conflict. Now, in the case of politics, this is an interesting thing because we often view the political situation as though, something that the republic was invented to protect us, and somehow it slipped up and got fucked up. And it's an interesting thing as well because we have this kind of democracy now, but if you read about Roman politics, about the senators, or read Cicero, you'll see a lot of the same kinds of complaints that we complain about now, because power was somewhat distributed among property owners, and our version of democracy still has that characteristic. And basically, we've replaced in place, like a fossilization process, one system with a system that's shaped like it, but the elements maybe are a little bit different. But if we go back and we look at where did the republics come from, in the West, they came from the expansion of the city-states, and it was not to protect people per se that were a member of that. I mean, the way the states came about, where there were territories rather than just a city-sized territory, but territories that the city took dominion over and called itself the capital of, was really a system of systematized, oppression. It was perfectly legitimate in Athens or Rome or Sparta to get 10 or 20 or 30 or however many men together that you could and go and brutalize and steal from from some village-sized place. And lots of people knew it was wrong, but basically nobody could stop them, and they became very wealthy, and so more and more that is good enough as a definition for legitimate. It's legitimized by this ongoing practice, and so the state has come from an institution that was meant to rob us, so that's true. And then we're faced now where the anarchists are like, so hey, don't use that system. But other people are like, well, maybe we can turn this system through some form of, political jujitsu to our own benefit. And the reason is because, there's various interesting issues of security. When you are a bunch of guys going out from Athens and sort of subjugating an area, there is sort of a kind of conflict that starts to stabilize things in a rather negative and oppressive way, but it starts to be appealing nonetheless because, okay, you have one group of guys come in and demanding money regularly. Well, those guys are going to stop the other guys that don't want to come. And if the ones that have the monopoly on demanding this kind of thing from you, if you can make them raise the standards of how they treat you higher and higher, and what you'll put up with becomes less and less, then you start to get better and better conditions. And through this process, we actually get close enough to, in the American Revolution, ideally, recast our understanding of what the system's doing and who the system is working for, and then perhaps replace the benefit that was going to the kings and the biggest brutes, and replace that just into the commons, into the infrastructure. Suddenly, our group behavior is just very practically in the interest of our group infrastructure. Not out of worship, not because it's the Son of God like some king or any other thing like that, but for a very practical reason, because that infrastructure serves us all. So we serve it in the sense that we produce it and then it serves us. And so this could be turned from a top-down hierarchical thing into a cycle where where we have the so-called higher levels of the government actually just kind of representational abstractions, so that a police officer can arrest any of the thousands of people in his jurisdiction and has discretion to do so, but he's not in a hierarchy above you. And this is the kind of anarchist that I am, is that I don't believe that hierarchical command and control structures are appropriate in, 90% of human organizations. There's maybe a 10%, of human organizations that do need, command and control hierarchies to some degree. Not absolute ones, but, enough to count. And the issue is that we do it in basically almost 100% of human organizations, of formal human organizations. And really, I'm saying, 90% shouldn't be organized that way. And so what do we do with the state? Yeah, it came to us as this corrupt, organized crime. There's no doubt about that, I don't think, in the West. And what do we do, now? Do we use the infrastructure it created and get rid of the organized crime part? Or are the anarchists correct? And, you can't really change the system into this new, better thing. You really need to somehow start from scratch. And how far back are you going to go? Because we, as I said, have raised the standards that, of our slavery, let's say, just to grant, let's say we're in this kind of oppressed slavery like these villages around Athens or Rome. We're in this oppressed slavery state, but we've raised the standards of that slavery enough that, going back to waging against just our odds in a totally laissez-faire state of nature, homesteading for yourself, your property is what you can protect, that we might actually be worse off. So, I kind of would love to switch to, a new way of doing things without going, back at all, without going back to some more primitive condition and having to start over. Because in that case, I'm afraid we'll just get back to what we have now anyway. So, and it'll just be a terrible crisis where it takes a while to get back to what we have now. So, I think I am in the camp that we can refactor our current government without destroying it, without violent revolution, just gentle evolutionary types of processes and iterative processes. We can refactor this system that still does look like the Roman system, but we've already refactored it a lot by getting vote and representational democracy, into the mix. And we can refactor it further. I'm basically of that position. But my understanding for the anarchist position comes from, it is logical. If something was designed to bind from the very beginning of its creation, then it's kind of hard to have trust in that, solution and not think that it's systematically part of the problem.